ask the questions and desist.
My job is to answer the questions.
The role of a bishop is demanding. How do you practice self-care? What do you do to renew yourself? Is there anything that we in the diocese could do to support our bishop's self-care?
The role of a bishop is demanding. And the way I know that is I work for one. So I'm the canon to the ordinary in the Diocese of Fort Worth. And that actually is a unique role among canons. In the Diocese of Fort Worth, we have a bishop provisional, which means we share a bishop with the diocese next door. Or rather, they graciously shared their bishop diocesan with us. So our bishop, Scott Mayer, is in the Diocese of Northwest Texas 2/3 of the time, and in the Diocese of Fort Worth 1/3 of the time. He lives in Abilene, Texas, which is halfway between his two diocesan offices in Lubbock and Fort Worth. But what that effectively means is I get a lot of opportunity to help the bishop in the Diocese of Fort Worth. So I know firsthand, it's a lot of work. I take care of myself by praying first and worrying not much. I really feel blessed to have many partnerships in ministry. And that's really one of the ways I take care of myself, is I do almost nothing alone. So that's a gift and a blessing, and I would hope that here that would be the same. And I think it would from what I hear from the staff and Bishop Mayer. I also have a wonderful family and kids that keep me honest. My husband does a little bit of that too. They also support me and give me space and give me encouragement that is just absolutely foundational. It's also foundational for me to have relationships and friendships outside the Episcopal Church, in part because I need to hear our church and myself from outside our own circles, and it's a real blessing to have a diverse group of friends and family who, again, I can partner with and who help me to understand really life and a lot of other things from the perspective of our Jewish brothers and sisters and our Muslim brothers and sisters. So that's part of what keeps me going. What could you do to help my self-care? Check in on me, hold me accountable. It's good that my bishop asks me if I'm taking my day off, and it's good for my bishop if I ask him if he's taking his day off. And so to not be shy with each other about telling the truth in love is a really important habit.
El Camino Real has a large, vibrant Latinx community, which is a rapidly growing part of our diocese. Some face challenges around language, poverty, and access to appropriate theological training, especially for ordination. How would you engage, include, and support this community in all its diversity?
So, hablo español solamente un poquito, porque ahora no uso español en mi diócesis. So we don't currently have any Hispanic congregations. We're working on that. And I just spent a week in Mexico trying to brush up my Spanish a little bit, and I think it's really important. Our Latin American and Mexican brothers and sisters, they learn English. I think it's really important that the leadership of our church learns Spanish. I love to lead worship in Spanish. With some practice, I can preach in Spanish. So I think that language piece is a huge thing. And it's also important, I think, to confess what I don't know and trying to practice and fail is part of what our Hispanic brothers and sisters then can teach me. Yay! By the way, we went to see San Paulo yesterday with Father Martin and our good folks there, and I hope you take an opportunity. I think, Father Martin, could they come and visit?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so there's your invitation. Go see the kids, go bless them with your presence, go bless them with your tutoring skills. That's just a really important partnership. I think another thing that I would say about partnerships with any community is I would ask our Hispanic brothers and sisters, our Latino brothers and sisters, what do you want? What do you need? What do you wish we didn't do as your brothers and sisters in church? Because partnership is about learning from one another, and I think that's a really important part. Oh, can I say one more thing? So I grew up in a very rural, very poor community. And I have worked in the inner city many summers. And during the year when I was close to New York City, so what I would say too is I think it matters, our background and our experience. And I have had the privilege and blessing to struggle as someone who doesn't have very much, and the blessing of working in really tony parts of the country, like Darien, Connecticut, where there are gold forks. Who knew? So, I think to be able to reach out and speak folks' language and be able to learn the language of anyone from them is really crucial.
Many Episcopal parishes are in the position of needing to redevelop their practices, emphasis, perhaps their mission, in order to be sustainable. What part do you think the bishop of the diocese should take in this redevelopment? Do you see this only as a money problem, or is there also a failure of leadership?
All of us, as individuals and congregations, need constant renewal of the grace and love and power and vision of God. One of the reasons I think Jesus called us to follow him was because Jesus knew that life is a rolling river. And even if you're in the same place, the river moves. So I think all of us as brothers and sisters in Christ are together in this journey of redevelopment work wherever we are. It starts with the renewal of our hearts, of being open to God touching us, of being open to risk in our own personal spiritual lives to learn something new. And from there, then we can partner together as congregations and with the diocese and with the wider church. I am currently the chair of the task force for church planting and congregational redevelopment for the entire Episcopal Church. I feel blessed and privileged to serve in that role. Jesus Veyes, your canon, and I served on the advisory group for church planting in the last triennium. The blessing of that is that we get to learn from people all over the church about the most innovative, creative, inspired things that they are doing to try to catch the breath of the Spirit, to let the breath of the Spirit blow into their sails and take them to the next place. So from food trucks to bike shops to congregations, that churches that are planted with the intention of never having a church building, to congregations that are dreaming up completely new uses for a building that they have grown too small, perhaps even to keep up by themselves. So I think the bishop and the diocese absolutely are vital partners in that work. And I'm really glad that you have your, I don't remember your exact title.
Curator for Emerging Communities.
There you go. Curator for Emerging Communities. This work of church planting and congregational redevelopment really is an art and not a science. And so it takes relationship to make these transformations happen. And absolutely your bishop, I think, should be doing what Bishop Mary is doing, and that isn't forcing people to do things, but it's inviting people to dream the dreams of God.
Do you feel Episcopal bishops should engage in publicly suggesting and pressing for policy and law changes on political topics, such as immigration, gun violence, climate change, etc.? If yes, to what extent and how would you involve the diocese's clergy and laity? What would this kind of leadership look like for you? And would you expect to collaborate with other bishops?
I do feel that Episcopal bishops should take a public stand. But when we become clergy and when we become bishops, we no longer represent only ourselves. We represent a community. So it's really important that we are in communication with our community so that we are fairly representing that community. In the Diocese of Fort Worth in Texas, as you might imagine, gun control is a huge issue. Our rural congregations feel very differently about that than many of our urban congregations. And so our bishop and I and our staff have to think very carefully with folks about how to be prophetic and nurturing to all God's children. Because it's really easy, I think the thing with advocacy work is, it's really easy to leave some folks feeling like they're outside. And you know, somehow Jesus managed to include a lot of folks. Now in the end, he did alienate some people and they crucified him. So, you know, there are times when we take stands that are not popular. And as a bishop, I would take stands with you. Because that's really, that's what it means to be a bishop, I think. I do think, too, that it's powerful when bishops and clergy and lay people lead together. Recently, I and some other folks in the Diocese of Fort Worth created, with some other folks in our community, the March for Love Not Hate. It was after the white supremacy issues and events and riots on the East Coast. And it was a healing balm to our community. We were told over and over again, thank you for not leading with the negative. Thank you for leading with the positive. We are marching for something. We are marching for the coming kingdom of God.
What are the most important moral issues facing America today? And what should be the role of the Episcopal Church and Episcopalians in addressing them? Are you aware of the public policy network recently established among the 6 dioceses of California? How would you encourage and participate with this group?
Oh boy, how are we going to do this without getting in trouble? The most important moral issues. And what should be the role of the Episcopal Church and Episcopalians in addressing them? One of the most important moral issues is that we have managed to be so divisive in our disagreements that we can't have real conversations about lots of things that we really need to have conversations about. As Episcopalians, I think that we have a unique opportunity. We're a big tent church. We work very hard to bring people in rather than to force people out. That is a charisma, a skill of the heart that our nation, our world needs right now. So, there are moral issues. You know what they are, grocery listing. Everything from abortion to, care of the earth, to LGBTQ rights, to rights for women, to, all of these things, right? And each and every one is important. As individuals, I think it's important that we are able to articulate what we think about these vital moral issues as from a position of the heart and from a position of how God has loved us. How has God loved you in a way that informs your position on these issues? Yes, I am aware that there's a public policy network here. I'm sure you also know that there's the Episcopal Public Policy Network for the whole church. I'm regularly involved with conversations with folks in Texas and with folks on a church-wide level about advocacy and about discerning, and it is a careful work of discernment, how to use our time and energy together to make the biggest difference in our communities. I would keep doing that.
Last one. What do you think would be the most important quality, skill for the next Bishop of El Camino Real to possess?
The ability to partner with you all to get things done. The ability to catch a hold of God's dream for your community, and then the ability to put feet to that. And it looks different in every community. That's what I've learned from being a Canon, is that each one of our congregations is unique and wonderful. And by that I mean full of wonder. It means being able to have relationships in each congregation so that when the congregation is on the cusp of change, there's enough trust between bishop or canon and the congregation to take a risk. In my experience, it's interesting, when I first was a rector, I thought that the biggest issue in my congregation would be money. Because we were kind of a middle-of-the-road congregation, fairly good size, 200 on a Sunday, but we didn't have a lot of money, and I thought that would be the biggest issue. It wasn't. The biggest issue was courage, was being able to say, yes, we're going to try that. And what I discovered, this story is related to the hair, by the way, was that that risk successfully taken, whether the thing you do fails or succeeds, if you can hang together through that, success builds on success. And I wish I had more time to give you examples of that.
Well, we do have time for a question from the floor.
Yes? You went to the Diocese of Fort Worth during a very difficult time. We had a history of being against the ordination of women. With the splits that took part, you had probably major financial problems. In the several years that you've been there, what do you think are your major accomplishments?
So the Episcopal Diocese of Fort Worth split the end of 2008 and the beginning of 2009. They ordained their first woman in 2010, end of 2010, and my husband and I moved there in 2012. First time I visited the diocese was March of 2012. And I really didn't know hardly anything about the story of the diocese. What I quickly learned was that lay folks, especially in that diocese, had given everything, including relationships with friends and family members, to live what they believed as Christians. And that was powerful to me. Another thing, though, was that they were really grieving the loss of a lot of things. And so I was hired, called as Canon in early 2013. And I think so a couple of our really big accomplishments. One is we are now a fully inclusive diocese. So we haven't just ordained our first woman. We have clergy who are openly gay, openly lesbian, who are gay and partnered. We just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of our first openly gay partnered priest in a rural congregation. I think my biggest contribution in that has been to listen to folks about where they are and ask them, okay, what's next for you? This congregation, it was a brave step that they took. And I was the bridge person. I was the person who said, nothing is off the table. I want to go where God is calling you. I want to help you get to where God is calling you. Let's discern that together and see what happens. I have helped a pair of congregations come together into one. I've helped 3 congregations come together into one. We've raised almost $1 million to pay clergy in our diocese because after the reorganization of the diocese, we didn't have any money at all. So no endowment, no cushion, so we needed help and partnership. And the amazing thing to me was when we told our stories of what was happening in Fort Worth for the good of people and for the glory of God, fellow Episcopalians said, how can we help? And that has been a huge lift to the diocese. We've planted 2 churches. We have started a mission enterprise zone, a food bank and food desert. I'm really proud of all of that stuff. And really, the job of the bishop and me was to say yes and to build bridges.
All right, I think that's the end. Well, thanks a lot.